Did you know that for every billion spent on projects globally, enterprises lose about $97 million due to poor project performance? Welcome, everyone, and thank you all for joining us for today's webinar on project management best practices, completing every project on time and on budget. My name is Kaylin Saunders, and I will be your host for today's session. A brief introduction about us. Inventus Learning is a leading training and certification organization providing globally recognized certification courses such as PMP, Prince2, CAPM, Lean Six Sigma, PMI-ACP, DevOps, COBIT-5, cloud computing, big data, and more. Over 10,000 professionals worldwide have been trained and certified by Inventus Learning for some of the leading Fortune 1000 companies and government organizations across 40-plus countries since 2015. Inventus Learning also hosts webinars on some fascinating topics across various industry verticals, so follow us on LinkedIn and other social media platforms to stay regularly updated on our upcoming webinars. Today's webinar will be presented by Chris Devaney, a project management expert with over 23 years of experience. He has consulted to government agencies from the United States, the Royal Government of Saudi Arabia, Canada, Cayman Islands, and the United Kingdom. His book, 90 Days to a High-Performance Team, has helped and continued to help thousands of executives, managers, and team leaders improve performance. Chris holds degrees in management studies and organizational behavior from Boston University. He has traveled to 22 countries and 47 states in the course of his career. Hopefully he'll be able to get the last few soon. So just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them in the chat box or the questions box, which are both on the right side of the screen, and I will bring them up at the end of the presentation. Also, if you'd like a copy of the slide deck, you can download that from under the Handouts tab, also on that right panel. Now, without further ado, I will hand it over to you, Chris, to take this webinar session forward.
Kaylin, thank you so much, and welcome everyone. So glad you could join us. And in case you were wondering, it's the two Dakotas and Alaska that I have yet to visit.
I was curious.
We'll get there someday. We'll get there someday. Okay, so here we are to discuss, to learn, clarify, and confirm project management best practices, completing every project on time and on budget. And let us see if I can make this work. Forgive me 1 second. There we go. We have heard from Kaylin what Inventus Learning is about, and I believe Kaylin has also clarified and confirmed this, and she's also told you much more than anyone ever needs to know about me. So let's focus in on our webinar and on our presentation today. We have 4 key objectives. These include managing projects consistently, raising all of our awareness to the process of project management, helping us to acquire and or enhance our project management skills, and to increase our communication skills. Throughout today's presentation, today's webinar, we will be pausing at different points as I do my best to do 2 things. First of all, to share as many current and recent examples of the concepts we're discussing, and to especially hone in on what I have seen over the years and experienced over the years of what we would consider project management best practices with examples. All right, so we're going to present the process, and I encourage you to apply it to at least a project you are currently working on. And when we get near the conclusion, I will remind us all to focus on an action plan that we're going to emerge from today's webinar with. All right, so why should we use project management? Well, here are a few thoughts. Using a process of project management helps us first and foremost to save us some time, energy, and frustration. Using project management process also gives our internal customers more time to be spent with external customers. When we follow a consistent project management process, that gets our product to market faster, it improves the quality of our work lives, and also very importantly, helps us meet corporate goals. And I'll place some emphasis throughout on the importance of reminding everyone on a project team what our goal is or our goals are, as well as which of our corporate goals completing our project on time and on budget will help us to achieve. So what is project management? Well, it's the negotiation of commitments from specialized resources and the guidance of those resources towards specific business objectives within a wider organizational strategy. Why project management? Well, a few reasons. First of all, it helps us reduce the number of tasks that could potentially be overlooked during the project. It also helps us eliminate reinventing the wheel by standardizing routine project work. And here's my first pause. We were working, and in fact, I can pinpoint it almost to the year. In fact, now I remember, it was 1999, so it was 19 years ago. We were brought in by an organization to help them go into the next century with an effective management plan to help managers who were managing people in a variety of locations more effectively. Virtual teams, distributed teams, that sort of thing. And at the time, the organization did not have a corporate intranet where project teams, we all know and we've experienced, when we conclude a project, we have a lessons learned meeting. What did we do well on our next project? What would we do better? And because they did not have an active corporate intranet at the time, there was not information being shared from project teams that had completed their project with all the other project teams throughout the organization. So this is a reminder when I see eliminating, reinventing the wheel, that one of the best practices in organizations, no matter the size, is that there is a portal somewhere, a corporate intranet, a portal. It's usually password protected, so only internal employees can access it, where project teams, right after they've completed their lessons learned meeting, they post the lessons learned up on the corporate intranet into the portal. And this way, when you and I are working on our next project, we can go and access that portal, access that information, and learn or relearn some of the lessons that people on previous project teams have learned. Very, very important. That's a critical best practice. Okay. Other reasons to use project management. Using a process ensures that customer requirements are met in an efficient manner. And also, using project management minimizes risk of project failure. And all of these contribute to promoting teamwork and cross-functional accountability. What is a project? Well, we reference here the Project Management Book of Knowledge. That's what PMBOK is. And while I have the floor, and just before we touch on, well, I'll mention the definition. It's a temporary endeavor over a specific amount of time undertaken to create a unique product or service. So let me take this opportunity. I am not compensated for this, but this has been experience of accessing and utilizing the resources of the Project Management Institute. Easy website to remember, PMI.org. Access their website. They have many courses that you can take to achieve certification, and especially if you don't already have a copy downloaded, buy a copy of the Project Management Book of Knowledge. Download it, live by it, especially on projects. It is the definitive resource, in my experience, for helping us manage projects effectively and completing our projects on time and on budget consistently. Okay, so 5 phases in the project life cycle. We'll take a look at all 5: initiating, planning, implementing, controlling, and completing. So let's take a look now at initiating a project. Again, one of the key inputs are past lessons learned. When there's a vibrant, information-laden corporate intranet portal that we can access, where we can learn all the lessons that project teams before us have learned, extraordinarily helpful. And of course, we need a charter from an executive sponsor. So what we do is we initiate the project as 4 things. We assemble what we call our core team. We build core team ownership, conduct preliminary planning, and then validate the initiation of the project. So I share this concept of a core team, and in case you're not familiar with it, the concept of a core team is generally applicable in larger organizations. That is to say, if we're part of a larger organization, let's say there are, I don't know, 6 departments, sales, customer service, IT, operations, finance, and I know I'm forgetting another one, but let's just say that we have 6 departments in our larger organization. Well, on many projects, the person who is the executive or senior manager in charge of that department will not necessarily be involved on our project team. However, there is often a setup in larger organizations where there is a core team, aka make sure we have at least one representative from each of our departments who is on an executive or senior manager level. And then building off of that core team, we will have more members of our project team, let's say 3 to 5 or sometimes even more employees, managers who are members of each of those departments. So for our purpose, especially if you work in a larger organization, that's the applicability of this concept of a core team. If you work in a smaller organization, your entire project team may be the core team. So the project manager works with the project leader, project executive sponsor, and functional leaders to assign resources for each functional area to be represented on the core team based on the best available match of required skills. We, of course, verify the availability of the proposed core team members, create a core team organizational chart, and then the project manager holds one-on-one discussions with core team members to prepare them for involvement with project initiation and planning. The core team provides strategic direction for the project by utilizing their decision-making authority to bring resolution to issues raised by the various sub-teams involved in the development of the product. For example, I was working, I should say our firm was working with a multinational corporation which actually had 3 companies as a part of the larger holding company. And for our project, the CEO had said, okay, I've just been promoted to CEO. I want to bring together all 96 of our senior executives and senior managers in one place so we all can get on the same page and discuss the strategy for growing our organization continually worldwide. It was a huge project. And so what we did, what they decided, and we agreed with, is let's establish a core project team for this meeting. And so what we had was we had a number of representatives from each of the functions of the company. We also made sure that we had at least one representative from each of the 3 companies that the parent company controlled. And of course, we had two representatives from our firm because we were involved as facilitators for this meeting. So we were the core team, and yet there were many managerial teams throughout each of these three companies who were involved in the project and who were able to provide input. And the core team also, though, delivers the product against the established timeline by escalating any issues, any concerns, any decisions affecting their ability to deliver against the timeline to the management team and the executive sponsor managing the budget for the development project. We reported, staying with this example, we reported to the Director of Human Resources, who reported, of course, directly to the CEO. So, what might a core team structure look like? Well, let's take a look first at both project leader and project manager responsibility and how these two key role players interact with each other. So first, of course, the project leader is the major content owner for the team, provides primary overall strategic leadership, ensures the project plan allows rapid and robust time to market, knows the skills and resources needed, addresses both resolving issues and identifying risks, and helps to ensure sound decisions. The project manager, meanwhile, is the major process owner for the team. Make sure that someone is assigned to and delivers on taking meeting minutes, organizing and updating agendas, and scheduling and conducting meetings. The project manager also is the center of the team communication plan, and we'll address that in a little more detail in a moment. The project manager is assumed to know and possess how to use the tools, the key tools of the project management trade, I should say. The project manager is responsible for the project plan, for managing resources, for facilitating resolution of issues, is also generally in charge of the budget, and usually works directly with the CFO, whoever is in charge of authorizing checks and expenses related to the budget for the project, and also, of course, is responsible for integration. Now, these two key individuals also interact with each other. They share a couple of responsibilities. They both help to guide the establishment of the vision and tone for the team, and they both participate in the development of the team's strategic direction and maintain the alignment of the project team. And they back up each other. Okay, so we're talking about building core team ownership. What we do is we review all the inputs, lessons learned, and the authorization from the executive sponsor. We develop what is called the project overview statement, and rest assured I have a number of tools and templates to share with you all, and I'll highlight on each of these tools and templates some of the most important best practices. Of course, we also identify stages and milestones. We develop what's called the influencer assessment, example to follow, and we develop our communication plan for our project, also example to follow. All right, so project overview statement. Let's just touch on all the elements that should be included in this. Project name, project code if we use one, names of the project manager and leader. Who are our core stakeholders? I'm going to pause here. Let's just say this. In my experience, perhaps in yours, key stakeholders have occasionally been ignored, and almost always when a key stakeholder is ignored, the project is at great risk of failing. Let me explain in case this has not been part of your experience yet. And I'll share an example. Key stakeholders, core stakeholders, are people who are not necessarily members of the project team. In fact, they rarely are members of the project team. However, They can influence the success or failure of the project, and they may be involved as contributors. So to use an example, we were working with a group of a hospital administrative team to put together a project to build a new wing, which was actually going to expand the bed capacity of the hospital by almost 50%. Well, it turns out that two individuals had stepped up when asked to donate $1 million each toward the building of this new wing. And so, of course, they were identified at our first project planning meeting, and the chief administrative officer said, you know, we need to involve these two individuals in some way, keep them in the loop. And to his point, we then said, well, you have a relationship with both of them. Would you ask them both how they would like to be involved? And in short, they said, we don't need to be at any of the team meetings. We would just like to be copied on the meeting minutes of the meetings. And of course, we would like to be there when the new wing is dedicated. And that seemed like a perfectly reasonable request on their part. And so that's what we decided. You see, if we had not, if the CAO had not brought up these two individuals' names, I think most or all of the rest of us would not have been aware of their involvement. And, you know, think of the catastrophe that could have occurred if we had ignored these two stakeholders, just assumed their goodwill by virtue of their pledging to contribute, and then realizing at some point, oh my gosh, we didn't even ask them how they would like to be included, and therefore one or both of them have decided to pull back their donation. That would have been catastrophic. Okay, very important is on the next line, the goal mission. Who are we? What is the main deliverable, and for whom, as well as the organizational objective this achieves? Let me say this too. It's been my observation, perhaps it's been yours, that some individuals, some project managers, some team leaders have failed to include this, not just on the project overview statement, but also on all of the communication and the documents that are shared with everyone. And for goodness sakes, you know, one of the biggest mistakes I believe we can make is to fail to keep people on a project team focused on the goal and goals. What is the main deliverable and for whom? Which organizational objective or objectives is completing our project on time and on budget going to help achieve? That should be on every piece of documentation that is shared. Okay, I'm up back off my soapbox. Objectives, what are our deliverables? Major activities and groups of activities. Potential obstacles. This is where we start to do our risk assessment, risk management analysis. And of course, what are the contingencies? For each risk, each potential risk that we have identified for our project, what is our contingency plan to address each specific risk? I cannot emphasize that strongly enough, because this is another area where project teams often, too often, fall short. They have failed to methodically and thoroughly flesh out all of the potential risks to completing the project on time and on budget, and the contingency plans that they will have in place to address any of those risks should they occur. I can't emphasize that strongly enough. The more thoroughly we plan, the greater the success our project has of being completed on time and on budget. What are the critical success factors? What's our budget? What's our time frame? Who prepared this? date, any revisions, the approval by the core stakeholder group, and the date. Okay. Next, finish the statement. This project will be completed when the project you're currently working on. How do you finish that statement? The project I'm currently working on will be completed when. That's a way to remind us of the value of an objective. Okay, so speaking to that, what we do also is relate our goal, our project goal, to a corporate objective. And we use as an example here, product leadership is one of the goals of an organization we were working with recently. It's one of their strategic goals. That and this is a pharmaceutical organization, and they said, you know, one of our hallmarks is how we are a market leader with the pharmaceuticals that we produce. And so they related it, and I share this template with you. It is important for everyone to see the connection between the organizational goal, which goes in the black background box, with at least one. If we just have one project objective, that's fine. One project goal, that's fine. And who is going to be working on our project team towards helping us carry out our project objective or objectives. All right. Next, I referenced before the responsibility assignment matrix, and so here is a simplified example. And sometimes people roll their eyes at some of these templates and documents, yet this is all about systematically plotting out our project, planning it, and understanding who's responsible for carrying out each of the major activities on our project. So what we do here, we list in the first row, the first column, I should say, you know, each of our major project activities. And then going across, PM, project manager, PL, project leader, and then we list the names of each and every team member. And we identify whose input is required for each major activity. For each major activity, who is participating on carrying that out, who is accountable, who is responsible for reviewing our progress and our achieving the completion of each major activity, and then who is responsible for signing off, saying we have, in fact, completed this project major activity. In most cases, the project manager and project leader, one will be responsible for review, one will be responsible for sign off. This way, there's a check and balance in place. You have two sets of eyes looking at everything and you know, checking off you know, that everything is okay. All right. Communication. We all, of course, will agree that communication is very important. Let's think for a moment about what we understand about the communication process. I am the person at the top here. I'm sharing an intended message, and yet I convey this intended message in a way that, whether we realize it or not, or whether I realize it or not as well, is somewhat encoded. And it's encoded or screened or filtered through my background, past experiences, organizational pressures, my personality, self-image, etc. I am doing my best to communicate clearly what our project goal is, and yet it's still encoded. It is my job to convey the intended message as clearly as possible as the actual message. And what is involved in the actual message? The content. If I'm delivering it in person as opposed to in an email, my tone, body language, facial expression, how effectively I convey the context of our project. And if I'm conveying this, or when I'm conveying this via email, what still comes into play is content, my ability to convey tone in a written message, that's a challenge, and also the context of our project. And then you, as one of the project team members, you are receiving a perceived message. A favorite quote of mine, let's see if I can recapture this as close to verbatim as possible. It's from Thomas Banville. He once wrote, "I know you are sure you have understand what I am saying, but I am not at all sure that what you heard is not what I meant." AKA communication, there are a number of steps in the communication process. I have a thought in my brain, I then speak it or I type it as an email message. You then receive it, you might hear it if I'm speaking it, and you have to convey back to your brain what you have heard and or what you have read. So there's a perceived message that becomes a decoded message, and that is influenced in part, you as the recipient, on your background, past experiences, personality, self-image, etc. So many times when we're communicating, someone who is speaking or writing encodes their message, and someone else, as the recipient, is receiving, perceiving, and then decoding the message. There are potential sources of error every step of the way. Okay. Why do we communicate? Well, one of the most important factors in ensuring successful completion of project deliverables. Who's involved? Sponsors, stakeholders, team members. How do we communicate? And how frequently are we going to communicate? Those are two of the more critical factors in my experience. Written reports, meetings, schedules, databases, one-on-one. Let me specifically reference back that project I was addressing a few minutes ago of the global organization CEO bringing together 96 senior executives and managers worldwide into one location. Well, one of the first things we had to address, our project team, in our very first meeting was, okay, how frequently will we communicate and how will we communicate? And in short, we decided the following. Our leader was the, I know she was a finance officer, and I apologize, I'm forgetting her exact title. She was not the CFO, but she was a very effective project leader. And in short, she said, we're going to communicate using Microsoft Excel. We're going to post and save all of our project deliverables, timelines, everything in Excel. We will distribute that to everyone early Monday or late Friday. And so as a result, people are allowed to provide input into the Excel database that we were using to manage our project up through 9 a.m. Friday. That would give the admin sufficient time to enter and update that information and then save it all in the master Excel spreadsheet for our project, which she then would distribute again late Friday or early Monday. Our project leader also said, we're going to have our conference call for our project team every Monday at 9:30. And that is it. So it was important, and she recognized this, that we needed to clarify and confirm what method we were going to use to save our project data, what the schedule was for submitting updates and then receiving those updates, what our schedule was for meeting with each other. We had a conference call every Monday at 9:30, and that was critical to making sure we were successful, because just as with virtually any project, there were some bumps along the way. There were some risks, most of which we anticipated, a couple we didn't. So we had to work together through managing risk and contingencies. And then, of course, what tool are we going to use? Communication documentation. So that was shared via Excel and email once a week. And of course, we had opportunities to update that throughout the week. All right. So next, let's talk about making sure we have a good, effective influencer assessment. What we do with the influencer assessment is we identify people who can have an impact on the project, either positive or negative, and the action plan we're going to use to manage their influence. We, of course, want to revisit and revise as necessary and use it to generate a project communication plan. Here is the template. So what we do in the first column, list all our influencers. Second column, what is the reason, or what are the reasons why we have identified each individual as an influencer? What is our action plan for communicating with them? How are we going to communicate with them? How frequently might we communicate with them? Whose responsibility? That next column is extraordinarily important. Who is responsible for communicating regularly with that influencer? What is their schedule for communicating with that influencer? And then any status updates that the person responsible adds into this template. Okay, what is our communication plan? Well, our communication plan for our project provides a protocol for communicating with project sponsors, stakeholders, and team members, providing information regarding our audience, the recipients of our project deliverables. And our communication plan should be developed upon initiation of the project team and also should be used to manage communication activities. Here is a template for our communication plan. Key categories include our audience group or audience groups, our purpose or key message, our delivery vehicle, developer owner, date, and feedback and comments. So I share one example here. We were working on a project a couple of years ago, and our key audience group was the steering committee. This is the steering committee for the company, and we were working on a project to improve cross-department, cross-functional communication. And the purpose of including the steering committee was to update them periodically on our progress towards achieving our next project milestone. We decided that the delivery vehicle we were going to use was going to be a presentation, that the person responsible was our project manager, and they provided an update. This is one of several updates they gave on September 15th. And of course, they added, let's make sure we document this meeting with the steering committee and then distribute an email shortly thereafter, including the meeting minutes. This is who we were going to communicate with and how we were going to communicate with them. Keep them in the loop. Okay, so now we're ready to talk about planning our project. Very, very important. So our inputs include our formal approval from our project sponsor, our initial budget estimate, and our top-down project plan. What we do is we organize our full project team, develop detailed sub-team plans, rigorously revise our project plan, organize the full project team, validate the estimate, establish other resources, assign resources to tasks, and initiate team member performance. So in organizing our full project team, we determine the resources that we need, that we require, and the assignments for each sub-team. So let me pause a moment. You remember I shared the concept earlier of the core team. And in some cases, especially in smaller to medium-sized organizations, our entire project team is also our core team. We don't have any sub-teams. In larger organizations, there tends to be fairly consistently a core project team and then a series of sub-teams within each department, or which are blends of team members from a number of departments. We, of course, create an organizational chart for our full team, conduct our project kickoff meeting, and we plan for education and motivation for team members. So here is an example of an empowered multifunctional team. It starts with our core team, and as you can see, our core team has representatives from each of our departments, at a minimum, usually travel, finance, procurement, HR, and any other departments that need to be involved. Within that core team, of course, are our project leader, our project manager, and executive sponsor. And then as and when we are perhaps part of a larger organization, many project teams have sub-teams from each of the respective departments. This is the, if you will, the classic example in larger organizations of an empowered multifunctional team. Okay, so what we do next is we develop our sub-team project overview statement. We identify activities, determine the duration, create a schedule, determine resources, cost estimates, and major milestones. As we are creating our schedule, determining resources and cost estimates, of course, we're doing our preliminary risk assessment and analysis, and then our major milestones are contributing towards implementation. And we review our major activities, objectives, and project plans as defined by our core team and state all assumptions. Okay, so in developing a sub-team project overview statement, of course, we make sure that all sub-team members are present and that our sub-team project overview statement is in alignment with the core team project overview statement. So in developing our detailed sub-team plans, we hone in here on each of the major steps involved. All right, so as we're doing this, it's critical that we identify the various relationships and dependencies. There are three types of relationships and dependencies involving predecessors and successors. So the first connection, if you will, the first relationship or dependency is what we call finish to start. And so the first of the two tasks here we call the from task, and then the second is what we call the to task. So the from task, or the first task, must be finished before the to task or second task can be started. That's the first relationship dependency. Another type of relationship dependency is what we call finish to finish. This means that the from task or first task must finish before the to task or second task can finish. So it's finish to finish. And then finally, the third type of relationship dependency is start to start. The from task or first task must start before the to task or second task can start. And while this might seem like you're in the weeds, like you're going into great detail, that is absolutely what we are doing. And I say this as someone who admits to everyone that when it comes to attention to detail, I need a lot of help. You see, I'm one of these people, I'm much more big picture oriented and not so good at paying attention to detail, which is why whenever I'm working on a project team, I make sure that I have at least one other project team member who is my check and balance, who has my permission to call me on anything I am missing or misunderstanding, because I need that person to help keep me focused. And these dependencies are critical in identifying right now, while we're still planning our project, to ensure that we carry out our project, again, on time and on budget. I don't see failures in this area very often, but when I have seen them, they've caused, in some cases, significant delays. Favorite example, and it's not a pleasant one to revisit, but we were working with a construction company, and part of their project involved receipt of a very specific type of concrete that they needed to pour and include in the building. And there was a very special mix being used, and I don't remember exactly why. And they had gone to great lengths to establish relationships with two concrete companies. And they said, we're going to engage both of them. We're going to make one our primary and one our secondary, but we want both involved because, God forbid something happens with our primary supplier of this special mix of concrete, we want to be able to call on the second one. Well, in short, someone in finance dropped the ball and failed to send a check to the secondary company on time. And when an issue came up with delivery of this special mix of concrete from the primary company, and we contacted, or I should say a member of our project team contacted the secondary company, they said, oh, we've stopped doing business with you because you don't pay your bills on time. Suffice it to say, we actually made sure that a cashier's check was hand-delivered the very next day to get that special mix of concrete delivered. But again, it's attention to detail, and it's identifying relationships and dependencies that is critically important. Okay, so we're talking here about developing detailed sub-team plans, and what we want to do is to establish a milestone schedule. This is a schedule established so that we can track major activities of a project to get an overall determination of how a project is going. And I share this purely as a guideline, It's just that from our experience, projects that have a maximum of 5 milestones tend to be projects that are scheduled for less than a year. And projects we've worked on that have as many as 10 milestones, so anywhere from 6 to 10 milestones, in our experience, the length of that project has been greater than a year. That's all. But it is important to establish a realistic milestone schedule and to include buffers. Give yourself, let's say you're working on a 5 milestone project, and let's just say it's a 5-month project. That's fine, but what I encourage people to do in a case such as that is to set a schedule where each milestone is achieved in 3 weeks rather than in 4 weeks. This way, something happens, there's a delay, there's a risk. Maybe we anticipated it, maybe we didn't, but I encourage people in their risk management plan to incorporate time buffers. Better safe than sorry, and better to run the risk of coming up against that tight a window, that tight a schedule, and making it work that way. Okay, so next we want to take a look at the concept of a critical path. The critical path is the sequence of activities having zero float. You may ask, what's float? Well, Float is the amount of delay that could be tolerated in the starting time or completion time of an activity without causing a delay in the completion of the project. And I'm glad I just shared what I did about mapping out milestones. It is critical, just as we looked at relationships and dependencies between tasks on a project, it is critical, absolutely critical, that we account for, that we plan for any delays, any risks, and in charting out relationships and dependencies, if, let's say, we have a finish to start dependency, are we allowing some time in there as a buffer? We have task number 2 can start. We schedule it for March 1 as long as we complete task and milestone number 1 by February 28th. Well, if we're only leaving 1 day as a buffer, that almost always is insufficient. Give yourself some room. Give yourself some room. That is another project management best practice. Okay, so next we want to talk about managing full team member performance as we plan our project. So what we do from a training standpoint, we analyze skills needed versus skills available, what is commonly called the skills gap. Do we have a sufficient number of people with the sufficient skills, specific skills needed in order to complete our project? And if there is any shortfall, we need to, start training today, like we would have started it yesterday. So team training, also bring everyone together to make sure everyone's on the same page, and that we make sure everyone on our project comprehends what is our goal, what organizational goal are we working on this project to help achieve, and what is each individual's role in ensuring that we complete our project on time and on budget. Then for motivation, ask ourselves and ask each of our team members, how will this project benefit you as an individual? How could this project hurt you? Why do you want to create the proposed change that we're addressing with our project? Next, perhaps one of the more important questions to ask, what will be your role in this project? How will you be involved? What could make you want to lead this project before its completion? And in case you're thinking too, that's not necessarily an important question to ask, think of this. Who have you known and or who do you know currently who has moved? Maybe just the family has moved or the individual has moved before the project is completed. And if they are moving, how will they remain involved, and will they remain involved on the project? Think about that. You want to talk about risk assessment and contingency plans? That's something you have to account for. Who is each project team member's backup? That is often forgotten. Often forgotten. Don't forget it. Make sure each project team member has a backup identified. If for any reason they leave the project, they go out on medical leave. I mean, so many possibilities. And then from a management standpoint, we're conducting ongoing meetings, we're measuring performance, and we're making sure we hold ourselves accountable and we hold each member of our project team accountable as well. All right. So for metrics, for measuring our effect, I share a simple example, and this was used by an IT team that we worked with, who had, they had very, very close to, we just rounded it off, but they had very close to 100 employees, 100 users, and they also were made aware, the IT team was, that in addition to these software upgrades and uploads that you're doing, that you're carrying out, you're also setting up all users with a new computer, and by the way, within the next 6 months or so, we expect when our lease expires that we're going to be moving to a new location. So the CIO charged his team with setting up 2 sets of metrics. He said the first set of metrics we're going to set up is referencing rolling out our application and new computers along with the upgrades. And the second metric set we're going to identify is for when we move, and it looks like we're going to, what are the metrics we're going to use for setting up a new location? So for the application rollout, they said, here's how we're going to measure success. All 100 users, of course, must be set up. Of those 100 users, we want there to be fewer than 10 help desk calls. We want there to be fewer than 5 bug fixes. We want 100% of our requirements met. And we want, in the next 30 days, we want 90%, at least 90% of our 100 users trained. So they set up a series of classes to teach everyone, and some were tutorials that they did with some people remotely to teach people how to use the new applications and their new computers. And then for setting up a new location, they said, okay, of course, all our users need to be set up, and we want there to be fewer than 10 help desk calls. And oh, by the way, we're going to carry out this move and setup over 2 days. Many organizations assign 3 days for a move, aka Friday, Saturday, Sunday. This organization, for whatever reason, said, no, we're going to work everyone a full day on Friday. And by the way, everyone responsible, the moving company and everyone logistically, you have 2 days to carry out the move. And that was it. Unbelievable. Okay. So in transitioning from planning to implementation, we want to produce a finalized and approved project plan, make sure that all our resources are secured, and that we're prepared to execute in a focused way. So now we're ready to implement our project, perform the tasks, and we execute our plan, generate status reports, and present our report. So part of what we do in implementing our project is we conduct what are called progress updates. We execute our tasks. We include our milestones in our project report. We report out to everyone on the team, to our executive sponsor, and to any other stakeholders, our progress toward achieving each of our project milestones. We need to communicate. We need to communicate on variances. Sometimes we do have to call an emergency team meeting of our project team. We, of course, highlight critical issues and solutions, and we monitor against our project plan. And we need to implement contingencies. Hopefully, we've done a thorough risk analysis and assessment beforehand because we've identified those risks. Should any risks appear, we have to review and execute our contingency plans, evaluate the impact of any risk and contingency on our project plan, and yet continue on course. So in reporting our project status, we communicate the project status to the project executive sponsor and full team members, and we report our project status to the project executive sponsor and full team members at key time points. So we need to have a plan in place of what is our schedule for reporting our project status. Some project teams do it once a week. Some do it every 2 weeks. Some tie it very closely to the schedule for achieving milestones. And the only risk there is if we are falling short, falling behind our schedule for achieving a particular project milestone, we need to report that as soon as we discover it. However, if we have a regular schedule, a weekly or bi-weekly schedule for reporting project status, as long as the risk is not critical to the completion of the project, is not going to significantly impact, then we can include it in the next project status report. So here is a template that we use for our monthly project reporting. There, of course, is a financial report. Upper right-hand corner is representing the timeline for our project, and then the chart that we use lists each of our project goals, milestones, what the baseline is, what the current schedule is. I should say, where it says baseline, that's where we list the planned achievement of each of the milestones, the planned date. Then we indicate our current progress. If there is any variance, we of course include that. If there is any variance, then we need to list a reason for the change. We run into this risk, and we're incorporating our contingency plan to try to catch up. And of course, any critical issues involved that impact our ability to successfully and on time achieve each of our project milestones. Status meetings, very important for the project team. And again, this should be established before we start our project during the planning process. What's our schedule for meeting and communicating? And these status meetings allow us to discuss and resolve issues. If any individual project team member is running into a problem, they may request and receive an emergency status meeting to receive some assistance on delivery. In status meetings, of course, we also consistently make decisions and discuss the work for the upcoming time period between meetings. Back to the example I shared, on that large global corporate meeting that we were helping to facilitate. We were meeting once a week, and yet occasionally on a call, someone would indicate that they could not be part of the weekly conference call for whatever reason, And so all we asked each project team member in that case was to provide a backup person to participate and to represent them. And it was okay if this was, someone in an administrative role. It was just we deemed it critical to the success of our project that each project team member be represented on each and every weekly call. Implementation tools for problem solving, decision making, managing conflicts. Absolutely. Critically important. For integrating control, this occurs during implementation. And integrating control is the way or ways that we manage changes during a project. We run into a risk. We have our contingency plan in place, hopefully. We implement our contingency plan. And what we do every time we run into a risk and implement a contingency plan, we need to provide documentation to any changes in scope, budget, and resources. So now for control, we of course, we manage change control and we present our report. And the output, of course, is going to be the decision to either continue to move the project forward or to terminate the project, hopefully not. So what we do in change control is we have procedures in place that help us manage any changes in scope, schedule, cost, quality, risk, and or contract administration. And what we do in the change control process is we identify any potential changes, we assess the impact that the specific change may have on our project. Delays, cost overruns. We evaluate options. Sometimes we will have identified a risk in advance and we'll have a contingency plan, and yet someone will bring to our attention, you know, there's an element of our contingency plan that doesn't quite help us meet, you know, addressing the risk as effectively as we thought. I have a suggestion for us to discuss and consider. And when that happens, we thank that team member, and we will often call together an emergency meeting of our project team to discuss a new contingency plan that at least one team member believes will help us more quickly and sometimes more cost effectively address that particular risk. So we evaluate options, we communicate desired actions, we gain approval, we adjust our plan according to change, and we document our change. All of these are critically important. We must be methodical, systematic, detailed, and frankly, check each other's work. I've learned this lesson and relearned this lesson far too many times to ever go into working on a project team without having at least someone back in my office who I copy on everything, and I just ask them, look, would you please check my work? You're like my proctor for an exam. Please check my work and make sure that I've done everything I'm supposed to. Okay, so now let's take a look at some templates that we use for risk management and for change control. So what we do on this form is we list a proposed description of the change item, including the reason for the change. We estimate the effect on the schedule direction, any gain or loss of days. We also indicate any estimated effect on the budget. And furthermore, we list any estimated effect on the resources, any additional resources or fewer resources we may require. And if there is a change there on resources needed, we list the quantity and type. And we also identify any additional tasks that are needed for us to effectively address this particular change item. And of course, we need to gain authorization. So we indicate, is the change order enacted, no or yes? If so, project leader, project manager sign off on it. And when and where involved, the stakeholder also signs off on it. And then as we adjust our project plan and document those adjustments, we want to list and finalize any actions taken. How was our project timeline adjusted? How was our project budget adjusted? How, if at all, was our project risk plan adjusted? All of these are critically important. And then also, the reason I put this in red, we must be sure we communicate immediately to any and all affected resources. For example, let's see, I know, on the hospital new wing construction project that we're working on. One of the contingencies we ran into, and I should say one of the risks we ran into, and we did to a degree anticipate this. In addition to the specialized concrete, there were dimensions of the various steel beams that were needed and pieces on the top floor of the new wing that were needed, and there was a delivery delay. Our suppliers were actually quite good and quite effective, yet they ran into a logjam that they could not anticipate because of weather. And so there was a weather delay. And we had accounted for that, but not quite for the time period that we were informed was involved. We had incorporated up to a 3-day delivery of these materials, and we were informed by our contractor that there was going to be a 7-day delay. So that's a 4-day delay on completing our project. And of course, in part on this project, we had actually already, our mistake, sent out, notices announcing the dedication. And so we said, okay, our bad. We didn't quite plan accordingly. And so we're just going to have to go to the expense of sending everyone a new dedication date a week later. That gives us actually 3 more days of wiggle room, because now we have a 7-day delay where we accounted for a 3-day delay. And we've moved back the dedication date by a full week. So that still gives us some wiggle room, because that dedication date included a 3-day delay, and we're adding 7 days when we only need to add 4. So ultimately, that's what we did. It didn't cost us a whole lot, relatively speaking, but it saved us a lot of grief. Okay. Next, very important, is to document any and all change items on a change item control log. Most organizations number the change, and many of these are associated in number that is correlated to the date of the change order. Hence, we have date initiated as well. What date was action taken to initiate the change? Was it approved? What, if any, change to cost was involved? What, if any, change to our timeline was involved, delay or acceleration? When was the work started, and when was the work completed? All important, because it captures all this information in one place, and anyone can reference it. Very, very important. It reminds me of the concept that we share in time management, which is called time charging. Time charging is putting your information in a place where your mind trusts that you can find it, that you can access it. Okay, so now we're ready to talk about completing our project. And of course, we have a number of boxes we have to check off. So what we do is we've made the decision to terminate the project or receive the approval that we've completed our project, and that's fine. What we need to do, though, is very important. We need to conduct a lessons learned meeting, finalize our documentation, transfer project ownership, and release the resources, and that includes sharing the lessons learned with others. All right, so in our lessons learned meeting with our project sponsor, we review the commitments that we made, and we solicit their feedback on satisfaction. How satisfied were they and our internal and external customers with the review and approval process? How satisfied were they with how effectively project resources were used? How satisfied were they with the quality and the frequency of our progress reports? And how satisfied were they with the project process? All 4 are important. It is critical to receive customers' feedback, their satisfaction for all 4 components, in part because the better we are about receiving their input for their satisfaction and reporting on it, the far greater the likelihood that we will get our next project approved and sponsored. Okay. Then we want to involve our team for lessons learned. So we want to hold a project team meeting to review the objectives and deliverables for the project, our review and approval process, to recognize the members of our team, who was involved, what people did, compare the actual to the plan. Did we complete our project on time and on budget? If so, yay. If not, let's talk about why not. And also, we want to develop improvement ideas. So we want to ask, first and foremost, what did we do well? What went well? And we also want to ask, what would we do differently? What would we have done differently? And therefore, what would we do differently on the next project? What did we learn here? And of course, we want to finalize our documentation. Let's be sure we create an executive summary. And in case people are wondering, because I've asked many executives, how long or how short do they want an executive summary? And I'll share with you, because there have been several different groups of answers. There are a number of executives who've told me, give me 1 page, mostly in bullet points. I've been told by quite a few executives, give me no more than 2 pages. Maybe that's 2 sides of 1 page, or maybe that's just 2 separate pages, but no more than 2 pages. Use bullet points as much as you can, and use an outline format, and especially, many have said, use a timeline format. That will help me understand what you achieved and when. Attach, of course, any reports on project variances, feedback from the customer, sponsor, and team, all our lessons learned, and recommendations for future projects. And then next, extraordinarily important, both distribute the report and archive it. Upload it onto that corporate intranet, into that portal, where anyone and everyone in our organization can access it. Very important. And then it's time to transfer project ownership. So we want to make sure we provide all the documentation associated with our project and the names and contact information for the key contacts. That's often project manager, project leader at a minimum. And then we want to release our resources. We want to celebrate, hand out rewards for achieved metrics, and we're ready to move on to our next assignment. So in short, we've covered and we've touched on project management best practices in each of the 5 phases of a project: initiating, planning, implementing, controlling, and completing. And we've also addressed our 4 key learning objectives today. We've talked about how to manage projects consistently, how to raise not only our awareness, but everyone else's awareness, first and foremost, members of our project team, and then those outside our project team, in some cases stakeholders, to the process of project management. Here are all the steps we're going to follow. We hopefully have helped you to acquire and or enhance your project management skills, and hopefully we've also helped you increase and improve your communication skills. So, looks like we have an exclusive offer for webinar attendees, and I don't know whether I'm supposed to talk about that or whether someone else will, but no worries. I knew we'd get to this slide, so maybe I should deed back the controls to our wonderful host.
Thank you so much, Chris. I appreciate that and your wonderful presentation. It was very insightful, and I know I learned a lot, and I'm sure the other attendees did as well. Thank you for getting us back to the exclusive offer. We do want to make you aware of that before we head into question and answer time. So be thinking about what questions you have. Feel free to start typing those in. But we do want to make you aware that PMI and Axlos have come up with a major updates where PMP syllabus has changed from the 5th to the 6th edition, and Prince 2 syllabus has changed from the 2009 to the 2017 edition. So on that note, Inventus Learning is running an exclusive offer for webinar attendees today where you can avail up to 20% discount on both PMP and Prince 2 training. So all you have to do is click on the offer link in the chat window. So Zach is going to be sending through a hyperlink under the chat tab in the right panel. And once you see that, oh, perfect, it just came through. So go ahead and just click on that link. It'll take you to a form that you can fill out to block your seat. So this offer is valid for a limited time period only. Feel free to fill out that form later, or you can fill it in now. It'll also be sent to you via your email post-webinar. If any of you are looking at PMP and Prince 2 on-site group training requests, please feel free to email us at corporate@inventuslearning.com. You can see the address right there on your screen on the slide. So with that, feel free to take the time to fill that out again now or later, but we are open for questions. So it looks like we do have 9 minutes left of this webinar. So if you would like to ask a question, you can use the Q&A panel to type your question in on the right. So there's a questions tab on that right pane. You can type your question in there, or if you'd like to raise your hand, there is that option as well. It's a palm-shaped icon under the attendees tab. So if you just click on that attendees dropdown, then you're able to use that palm-shaped icon, and we can unmute your line so you can ask the question directly. So again, if you want to type it in, go ahead and type it in on that questions tab. If you want to ask it out loud, go ahead and click the palm icon, and we can unmute your line under the attendees tab. Lisa, thank you for asking about the slides being available. Yes, they are. If you go on to the Handouts tab, also on the right-hand panel, click that drop-down, you'll be able to see the PDF, and you can use it, you can download it from there. Not seeing the Handouts tab, that's a great question. And Zach, I'm not sure if you might know more about that as well. So hopefully on the right-hand panel, there'll be all the controls where you're able to see the questions and the chat. There should also be Handouts as one of those other tab options. So if that is minimized, look at maximizing again that right navigation pane window. It looks like Donna has a question for you, Chris. Donna is asking, do you find that these templates work for Agile too?
And thank you for the question, Donna. The answer is absolutely yes.
Great. Bianca also has a question. Any advice on how to improve meeting attendance? Great question, Bianca.
Oh, sure. So I'm going to guess, and Bianca, you can let us know if I'm misunderstanding your question. So I'm guessing, are you referencing here project team meeting attendance? And you can tell me if I'm misunderstanding it exactly. Okay, thank you, Bianca. So, yes. I even got a smiley face. Thank you, Bianca. Okay, so absolutely. Perhaps as you and others have experienced, I know for a number of years I was experiencing people failing to show up for meetings. So in part, this speaks to the possibility. So all I ask you to think about, and this is for every one of us, is to think about if you are experiencing an issue with people not attending project team meetings, to ask that individual or those individuals, if they could please send a second person in their place. But I also ask you to think about this possibility. And it's okay to ask someone who is not showing up to meetings. Are we holding our meetings too frequently? Are we not covering substantive issues? Are we kind of like in this cycle where people are feeling like we're having too many meetings? Because sometimes, in my experience, perhaps in yours, that has been the cause of people not showing up. Yet, at a minimum, when people assign a backup, this is why I did try to emphasize that when we were talking about it, is to have each project team member assign a backup who will attend in their stead. Okay, I hope those trains of thoughts are helpful to everyone on today's webinar.
Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome. Thank you, Bianca. Wow, perfect. Woo-hoo. Don't see that too often. Thank you. Thank you for that feedback.
So anyone else have questions? Feel free to, again, type those in on that questions tab. Great questions so far. Or feel free to raise your hand. Okay, I see another question come in from Donna asking to you, Chris, do you have any other sessions geared specifically for Agile teams?
Well, that's a great question. And I do. It's just that because this is an Inventus webinar, I would just ask you to direct that question back to the good people at Inventus. And I don't know, they may have other instructors who address agile teams, and so yeah, please, thank you for that question, Donna. Please direct it back to someone at Inventus, and they can decide whether they already have someone in place who can do it or if they would like me to do it. But I'm sure the good people at Inventus can help you with that. Thank you.
Thank you for answering that, Chris. And Donna would be happy to get you more information on that. I've definitely seen information on Agile floating around, so someone from Inventus will be able to get that to you afterwards where you can sign up for those. Any last questions? It looks like we have 2 minutes left. All right. I'm not seeing any more coming through for now. Oh, we just had a great one.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
All right. Is there a way to pressure a client in approving a change request, either positive or negative, specifically for change requests that are not affecting the project as of the time? Chris, what do you say?
Wow. Interesting question, and especially an interesting condition. So specifically for a change request that is not affecting the project as of this time, that's a real, that is a serious challenge. I mean, if there's a change request that is impacting, affecting the project at this time, yeah, certainly that's easier. I'm not, what I'm trying to say is, let's see. So, rather than to pressure someone into approving a change request, I would just suggest that it's incumbent upon us, if we're making a change request, to make the business case for why the change needs to be made. It's okay to submit a change request that's not impacting the project right now. It's just that one has to work, I think, a bit harder and be very detailed on the reason or reasons why you are making the change request. So I think it's incumbent upon any of us who are making a change request to make a very detailed business case for that request. Thank you for that question, Leonel. That's an excellent question.
Excellent. Well, it looks like we are out of time here now. It is exactly right on the hour. So thank you again so much for everyone who asked great questions. And Chris, for your great presentation. Is there anything else you want to cover before wrapping up?
You know, just one thought, if I could. I believe, and experience has taught me, that the best way you can honor the investment of your time that you've made by participating in today's webinar, and also the best way you can honor the financial investment that someone else has made so you can be on this webinar, is to emerge from this webinar with an action plan. You've been taking notes. Circle or highlight the top 1, 2, or 3 ideas that you gained from participating in today's webinar, and make those part of your action plan starting ASAP, maybe even later today. Okay?
All right. Well, thank you for that. And I would like to echo one last comment that came through. Samira says, thank you for the practical presentation. And I will echo that as well. Thank you again, Chris, and thank you all for tuning in today. In case you have additional questions after the webinar ends, feel free to email us at support@invensyslearning.com. That's support@invensyslearning.com. So thank you, and I look forward to hosting you again soon, and I hope you all have a wonderful day ahead.